Graphing functions. Today we'll be graphing functions on the graphing calculator. We'll be putting in the function, selecting points from the table, and then graphing on graph paper. So before we begin, let's review a few of the moves we'll be making on the calculator. We'll start with our friend y equals, and we'll enter the function in. We'll then graph, so we know what points we want to select from our table. Remember, your standard graph is a negative 10 to 10 on the x-axis and negative 10 to 10 on the y-axis. If you're graphing an equation with just an x, you'll be getting a line. If it's an x squared, you'll be getting a U-shaped graph or a parabola, and if it's an absolute value, you'll be getting a V. In the event that your screen is messed up, you're not getting the graph you want to, the standard graph, remember to go to Zoom. Select number 6, and that'll give you that negative 10 to 10 graph. To access the table, we hit second graph, because as you can see, the word table is written above the graph button, so we select second table. We'll also be using a few absolute value, solving a few absolute value equations. So you need to remember that the absolute value bars or parentheses, depending on the model of your calculator, is located under Math, and you toggle to the right to Numbers and select ABS for absolute value. So here's our first function. Y equals 2x minus 3. Here are the points we want to, they give us the x values. We need to determine the corresponding y values. Certainly this is a simple function, and you can do it in your head, but let's see how we would do it on the calculator. We first go into y equals and type in the function 2x minus 3. Okay, and then actually I want to hit graph first, and I see it's a line. And here they give us the x values, but if you had to graph this with no x values given, at this point you can figure out what range of points, what domain you want to pick, so you can graph, get a good look at the shape of the graph. Alright, so now let's pull the points off the table. Second table, we have 5. We have a negative 1, here's a negative 1. The corresponding number is negative 5, which we know. 0 is going to be negative 3, 2 is going to be 1, and this should be 7. So I went ahead and did some mental math here, make this go a little quicker. So the negative 1 is negative 5, 0 is negative 3, 2 is 1, and 5 is 7. When you're working on your graph, you can go up or down infinitely in the x column. You can go down in the y column, but you can't go up in the y column. So if you get stuck, just go down, go over to the x column, and that'll let you scroll up or down. Alright, so we would graph this, plot the points, and you should get a graph like that, similar to the one you saw on your calculator. Okay. So here we've got an x squared plus 2x minus 7. We're going to graph that one. So go into y equals and graph that function. Always check that you put it in correctly. You can take a peek at the graph. It's an x squared, so it's a parabola. So if I were selecting points, I wouldn't just select negative x's over here. I'd select a variety. Here they've already set us up for what they want us to select. And we can go into the table. Negative 5 is 8, negative 4, and start picking them off. I went ahead and made a picture of my screen. Lots of points. pen doesn't write. There we go. 3, 8. And this is a sad one. All right. So we're going to go ahead and plot all of those on our graph. And when you get done, it should look something like this. And you're going to connect them. I'm not going to attempt with the stylus here, but it should make a U-shaped graph. And our final example is an absolute value equation. Go into our calculator, go into y equals. So we need to do the absolute value of x minus 3. So we hit math, go over to num, select absolute value, x minus 3, close your parentheses, or some of you already have the fancy bars, minus 5. Take a picture of the graph there. Now here, if I was graphing this, I would make sure I get some points here. I'd make sure I get this vertex, which if I trace, let me see, 1, 2, 3, I think it's 3. So trace, enter, yeah, 3, negative 5. So I'd make sure I'd be picking up a point there and points to the right and left. Here we have some predetermined points. Oops. Of course, you would go to second table, second graph, and find the y values, the corresponding y value. So we have negative 4, 2, 0, negative 2, 3, negative 5, 6, negative 2, and 10, 2. So you always want to select points. If you're on your own, they're not giving you the x. You want to select points that's going to show a little bit of the shape of the graph. And when you get done, your graph should look like that.